There are many kinds of books in the world. We, as a group, would like to introduce you a unique kind of book, which combines the work of drawing and writing together. Most people, especially kids, are familiar with this kind of book. It is called comic books.
Comic books usually consist of collections of strips, which each one tells a short story or joke, which put together into one book. In each page of the comic book comprises of sequential panels. In each panel, there are cartoon characters, the background, and the balloons that capture the words or expressions of each characters.
Everyone finds this kind of book to be different and entertaining because it doesn't provide only a word, but it also lets the reader to enjoy the beauty of the cartoon drawn by the author of the book.
Nowadays, comic books are written almost everywhere around the world, but the one that holds the longest history of comic book is United States of America. They are home to the two most famous publishers of comic books in the world, DC and Marvel Comics. In Thailand, the famous comic books that capture the attention of readers are mostly from Japan and United States of America. Some Thai people may forget that there are also comic books written by Thai people. Thai comics emerged when Western portrait was introduced to Thailand during King Rama III to King Rama IV's reign, until it has developed into present-day Thai comic books. One of the most famous Thai comic books is Khai Hora, or Selling a Smile.
You can also notice that there is a sign of superheroes from the comic books, or maybe a drawing of characters from that book printed on t-shirt which people are wearing it and walking around the place. The cosplay culture is also famous among Japanese comic book readers. These are the examples of how much impact comic books have on people. From what I have mentioned, we will be discussing on the origin and history of comic books in Thailand, and the impact of comic books on people's culture throughout this documentary.
Comic book is one of the best publications humans have ever made. In every nation, gender, or even ages, people read comic books. Comic books were created in many countries around the world. The majority of comic books come from the United States, Europe, and Japan.
The United States is one of the most interesting countries that have a long history about comic books. DC Comics and Marvel Comics are the biggest comic books publisher in the United States. Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson is the founder of the company later known as DC Comics, and the one who initiated the American comic books. DC Comics has created a lot of publications, for example, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash, Aquaman, and Hawkgirl. Besides, DC Comics also has superhero teams such as Justice League and Teen Titans. The DC letters of the company name comes from the series Detective Comics featuring Batman. Martin Goodman is the founder of the company, later known as Marvel Comics, which has lots of publications such as Spider-Man, the Eggman, Iron Man, the Hulk, Ghost Rider, Thor, and Captain America, and also superhero teams such as the Avengers. European comic books are also very popular in France, Belgium, United Kingdom, Italy, and Czech Republic. In France and Belgium, comic books were written in realistic style, without any exaggeration, such as Becassin, the first popular French comic books. In the late 19th century, the first comics called Alice Loper's Half Holiday was published in the UK for adult reader, and then the publisher resorted to target children customer instead. The last country that plays an important role in comics history is Japan. The first comic in Japan was created in 1800 in the form of woodblock printed booklets, which was made up of folk tales, legends, and historical accounts. Japanese comic books are usually published in black and white. In 1775, Master Flash Goes Splendiferous Dream, written by Koikawa Harumashi, is the first comic book for adults in the world of literary history.
Thai comic was influenced by Western portrait during King Rama III to King Rama IV reign, who were in court. The artist is the first using mural painting as a portrait, so many believe that he is the first comic creator of Thailand. Here are some examples of them. The first genre of cartoons which became famous in Thai society is political cartoon. Next is kids cartoon, Cartoon Dek, which is mainly made to entertain little kids. The example of kids cartoon are Tuk Ta, Doll, Nuja, and Baby. The next one is One Baht cartoon, which made at a possible cheapest cost to sell at that time, because once the One Baht cartoon was introduced, Thai cartoons were not well known. The example of One Baht cartoons are Kamner Surya Chantra, The Birth of the Sun and the Moon, and Tamdi Bunsanong, Do Good Things, Get Good Returns. Short cartoons composed within few panels, such as Khai Khoro and Masanuk, first published in 1973, was considered as the most successful genre of Thai comic because of its joke and humor that can entertain the reader very well. The important thing is, it is sold for 1 million books per month. The last example is manga style comic. In the last few decades, this cartoon was highly admired in Thai society, so Thai people started to create their own comic similarly to those Japanese manga, with unique drawing style. Apayamani Saga, The Executioner, and The 13th Blade are some of the examples of Thai manga that become successfully famous.
When reading comic books, we can't deny that there are more than funny stories and fancy characters, but there are cultures, languages, or even fashions inside every panel and in every lines, all of which can spread across the nation or even across the world. When we were kids, we loved comic books that are full of pictures, colors, and funny stories. But right now, as we grow up, we look back to really cool, our city, and imagine childhood without realizing that this particular kind of book have created a reading habit or even reading culture. We forget that these silly comics have planted a seed of reading habit into those young readers so that later they become good readers. If we are talking about a country's cultures in comic books, the most obvious one must be in the Japanese manga. Japanese people themselves know about the spiritual tales that combine Shinto religion by reading Inuyasha, like as foreigners who know their stories about ninjas from Naruto or kimono dress from almost every Japanese manga. Now let's look at the other side of the world. In the United States, most of the comics we see will be all about superheroes, and that means that in Americans, most of the people they prioritize more on justice and rights.
In Thailand, we absorb both Western and Eastern culture and both ideas, but it is still vaguely seen when compared to their fashions that are obvious around Thailand. We We can see that there are superhero logos on t-shirts and bags every corner of the street around Thailand. And on the eastern side, there are cosplay events and competitions happened more frequently this past couple of years.
Cosplay is a short term for costume play, which was first started in Japan. People would dress up and pretended to be a comic or cartoon character, while some can sign up for a cosplay competition to show their outfits. The recent big events were the 75th Comic Party World Cosplay Summit or Thailand Comic Con 2014.
Language is another important part in a comic book. Many words have changed, shortened, and invented in a comic book, such as slangs, interjections, onomatopoeia, or action words. It is understandable because comic books contain pictures and characters. Therefore, they are likely to create words that best express the character's feelings or explain the situation.
For example, the word zap is an interjection to explain certain change, like zap. The fairy vanished in front of him. Kapow or pow show an action of a strong punch, tank sound, or a gunshot. Screech is a word to describe a sound when a car suddenly stops after a fast speed. There are also words that were invented in a comic book, such as the word brainiac in a Superman's comic book. Brainiac comes from the word brain and maniac. That means the clever humanoid that is Superman's enemy. Today, the term brainiac refers to a person who is amazingly intelligent. These represent that comic has an important role in language transformation. Comic doesn't give you only fun and excitement, but they also give you a combination of fun, knowledge, and culture that we absorbed into our daily lives without noticed.
ไม่ทราบว่าชอบอ่านการ์ตูนเรื่องอะไรครับโคนันครับผมอ๋อแล้วเริ่มอ่านการ์ตูนตั้งแต่เมื่อไหร่ครับตั้งแต่ม .2 ครับแล้วทำไมถึงชอบการ์ตูนเหรอครับเพราะว่าตัวการ์ตูนมันน่ารักครับ